Hi, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Title. My name is Janelle Reed, and for those of you that I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, I serve on the Women in HVACR Board of Directors, and I'm also the membership committee chair. I co-own Servway Heating and Air Conditioning. We are located in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, and I'm super excited to be hosting this season of Behind the Title podcast. So, as I've said before, we have incredible speakers lined up. Our goal is to have meaningful conversations and plan out what does it look like to have these real journeys be reflected in our lives? We want to impact our industry all across the globe. And so we're excited to get to pick the brains of these brilliant women. Before we get started, I also want to remind you that you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. That helps you stay in the know about when a new episode is released. And also, as I was thinking about, what would we like for women to get out of this podcast? This is a huge benefit of being a member. You have access to the women that we are interviewing. So after this interview, you can watch this recording and leave a comment, ask some follow-up questions to our guests, be engaging. The more engaging that this is, the more exciting it could be when we meet at conference, we get to see each other in person, we can really collaborate. Maybe you'll get to have coffee with one of the speakers and ask your follow-up questions in person. So I would really love for this to just be an engaging platform. I also want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. The Women in HVACR is a nonprofit organization, and so the work we do is made possible because of the generosity of our sponsors. So, the sponsor for today's recording is April Air.
You can't build a reputation on what you're going to do. A brand builds its reputation on what it's done, what it's built, and the lives it has touched. For the previous 60 years, April Air has been and will continue to be the brand that brings healthy air to families across North America. That's 60 years of determination and success. And how did we arrive here? Leadership, which starts with a strong, diverse team, and the results speak loudly. Tens of thousands of contractors have installed at least one of our April Air products. For decades, we've steadily converted industry market leaders, capturing 5 of the nation's top 10 builders. Our leadership is backed by product design and build quality that has only added to our reputation over these last 60 years. Millions of humidifiers delivered. Millions of air cleaners delivered. And since 2008, the basement and crawl space channel alone has placed nearly 200,000 dehumidifiers in homes. Let's continue building on the foundation and efforts of those who came before us. Let's not only maintain, but strengthen the relationships of those contractors whom have given us their loyalty. And let's use our creativity, determination, and focus to court new homeowners, new contractors, and new distributors as we drive towards our collective goal of bringing healthy air to every home in America. In these next 60 years, we'll continue to blend science and human understanding to transform April Air into the #1 healthy air brand. April Air is healthy air. How do we get there? How do we meet our goals? How do we reach these aspirations? With a world-class team, our people, an essential ingredient to any success. With a focus on knowing our customers and pursuing them where they live, learn, and shop. With our professional-grade products and ever-improving industrial design. With our speed of innovation and our cutting-edge technology. With our commitment to serving and educating our customers and contractors. And with our brand identity, whose mission is to create healthy environments for every home. April Air, your home for healthy air.
So thank you, April Air. We are so grateful for your support of the Women in HVACR and your commitment to supporting professionals across this industry. Thank you for making this conversation possible. Okay, let's get into it. So, as you all know, we created Behind the Title because we believe that a title does not define you, your journey does. So, each leader in our industry has a unique path, and those stories help inspire and encourage and equip the next generation of women. And so that's why today I'm excited to introduce our guest, Kate Cinnamo. Kate has served as executive director of Explore the Trades since 2017. She leads efforts to bring plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and all these different career opportunities directly to students and educators. So, under her leadership, Explore the Trades has reached more than 3,500 schools across the US and Canada, which is incredible, and also impacting over 1 million students. So she works closely with contractors and schools to help build the workforce pipeline. And just with their organization, they have equipped 35 schools with hands-on plumbing, HVAC, and electrical training equipment. And I would love to talk more about that, Kate, because that is like awesome. And just to add on to all the things that Kate does, she's also a founding member of the Skilled Trades Advisory Council, providing more and more information to help propel our industry forward. So thank you for joining us today, Kate. I'm really excited to have you today.
Hey, Janelle, nice to see you again.
Yes, I know. So it was good. We got to kind of chat and get to know each other a little bit. And the more I talked to you, the more I said, man, I know that there are so many other women who would love to be a fly on the wall and get to hear your story, pick your brain, get to know just all the things that you have discovered, the tools that you're able to bring and provide in the industry. It's invaluable. You have done a great work in collecting all these things and bringing it all to one place. And so I'm really excited just to have this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's get started.
Yeah, my first question, it's a fun one because I know you are a dynamic woman doing all the things. And, we want to know a little bit more about Kate. So tell us a little bit about your family and what you enjoy doing outside of work.
Sure. So I live here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area in Minnesota with my husband and two kids. We have a son and a daughter, both in middle school, eighth grade and seventh grade. So for all of the listeners, everyone knows what that's like, right? Like my husband and I have become the Uber for everybody for all the activities. And I would say in our free time, we like to travel. We recently got back from a couple trips, so just traveling and then being outside now that the weather is starting to warm, and it becomes springtime here in Minnesota. That's really what we like to do. And yeah, just normal family stuff, right? So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, I'm with you actually in that boat. I have a middle schooler, 13-year-old boy, and
Yes.
yeah, I
We're
tell
the
him all the
Uber.
time. Yes, exactly. We're just the driver, we're the
That's it.
coach.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an interesting season. But yeah, so I can totally relate to that. But I like this season also because, a little more independence has joined our family, which is nice,
It is
right?
nice. Yep.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about your background.
Yeah.
Before you came into the trades, you were from a different industry. So tell us a little bit about that industry and what was it like stepping into HVAC and these other
Yeah.
trade spaces?
Yeah. That's a great question. So, as you said in the introduction, I've worked in this capacity since 2017, so coming up right on 9 years. And the sector that I was in previously for over 10 years was senior housing and healthcare. So I was working with these organizations here in the Twin Cities in a capacity of community relations, grant management, fundraising, volunteer management. So, very much on the outreach side of that business, right? Of that housing business.
Mhm.
And I'm sure, like a lot of the listeners, where you've worked in an industry or an environment for so long, and you just have one of those days where you just know that you're ready for something else. You're just not quite sure what that might be. And I was in that discovery period and, just browsing for open positions and other organizations here in the area. And I came across this position as executive director with a focus on plumbing, HVAC, and electrical. Well, so it sounded very intriguing. I did not have a background in the trades. No one in my family, my close circle of friends, not really, right? So this was very much stepping into the unknown of what this could be. And, going through the interview process and really starting what that career, what that journey would look like, you just think, okay, well, and this is sort of what I thought when I started. Okay, so I'll be leading an organization that brings people in to work in the trades, and you can't quite wrap your head around it until you start doing it. And I remember one of the individuals who was instrumental in bringing me on board said, "You will learn to love the trades." And for someone who didn't have a background in it, the thought crosses through your mind of, "Oh, okay." Just a very passive feeling about it. But I think it's true. I think in my tenure here and the people I've met in understanding the trades and understanding the business, these are some of the best, most kind people I have ever met. And you really develop this feeling of admiration, really the value that these people do, right? And I know that it's a common stereotype, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but you don't really understand what you have in this industry until you're a homeowner and something breaks or something's not
Mm,
working how it's supposed to, right? So it's this peeling back the onion of, wow, this is something that no one notices until they do, right? So I feel like in my becoming familiar with the trades and really understanding it, I feel like what we have developed at Explore the Trades has sort of mirrored my experience in, oh, well, I didn't know this. Okay, well, if I don't know that, then there's millions of other people who don't either, right? So that was sort of how I was looking at things to say, well, if I don't know, there's a lot of people that don't know. And I'm not saying I'm the smartest person in the room. I'm just saying I think that there's a lot of information gaps that we have helped uncover and fulfill for a lot of people.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. That is such a good perspective that you bring. Just saying, this is what my experience is. How many other people are asking these questions? That's such a great like perspective to lead from. I kind of went into this industry in the same way, like, okay, what does this even mean to be into HVAC? And so I went to trade school. I actually enrolled in trade school before we started our company so I could wrap my head around what is HVAC? How does it work? What am I asking technicians to do? And so I'm with you, really didn't pay attention to it until it was a necessity in our home and, something breaks and you're like, oh, the thermostat is not the HVAC system.
Right.
That's
This
just the
this does not equal that, right?
yeah, that is just the controller. There are things outside and in the walls that, we're not
Right.
considering. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's good. So as the executive director of Explore the
Mhm.
Trades, you are influencing the workforce pipeline at a national level, right? So
Right.
not just your local, like I'm a local contractor, you are influencing all over the states. And, we have different ways of doing things across the industry, but how do
Mhm.
you see women really shaping the conversation as you are, moving around in these different areas?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so with myself and my team, we're all women, right? So
Okay.
we have heard, and throughout the years at different events that we've been at, we have heard the remark, and I know a lot of listeners have too, of from the conference attendees wherever we are, it's a really powerful message just to have women behind the table, right? So and I've noticed that with other trades focused organizations is that it's not just men anymore. There's a huge increase in women representing what we do. And I think what's really interesting, and you've already pointed it out, that we do a lot of work in the school setting. So elementary through high school, that's really where our content is shaped. And I think it's really interesting because a lot of the teachers, a lot of the school counselors who are talking to their students about these trades are women. Just
Mhm.
historically, right? That's a huge percentage of those professionals. And I think as women, there's a really valuable opportunity to broach those topics in a school as a business owner, as a person in leadership, as a technician, to go in front of these students and say, this is what I do. And I think it's right off the bat, you've sort of disrupted what they think they know, right? Especially high
Yeah.
school students who are really looking at, okay, what should I do after graduation? You've already disrupted the fact that it's not a gentleman coming in. And for women, for the young ladies who are in those classrooms, you get to see someone who, who looks like you, right? Like I didn't know that, I could do whatever I wanted to and work in the trades. However your hair is, or, just some of those things that the teenagers see right away. And I think women, how we are made, have a great opportunity to help explain what that path looks like and really some of the details associated with some of these positions in that
Mhm.
this is how I work in the field, and I think there can be a lot more detail, a lot more context to tell those stories, which can, I think, just you know tell our stories with a little different filter, right, to the students who are in those classrooms.
Yes, totally. The role of visibility, it's impactful, it's important. I know that's something that inspired me to say I can do things when I see
Right.
someone who, is visible in leadership and they look like me and I resonate with their story. It's already inspiring. Do you have any inspiring stories of women that you see in leadership or have seen or that have poured into you in mentorship that you could share?
Yeah, that's a good question. I remember prior to myself taking this position, it was a manager that I had several years ago, when I was still working in senior housing. And the administrator of our campus, she was the one that I would have one-on-ones with every week. And it was just really interesting because she had brought up the point that, when I started, I was fulfilling the position of a predecessor who had been there for years, right? So everybody knew how she did things, and that's a challenge for a lot of people when they're coming into a new role and it may be in someone's footsteps who've been there for a long time. So you're sort of disrupting the way things had already been done.
Yeah.
And my supervisor made a really good point to say you are who you are. And in terms of, leadership, working with colleagues, you can only lead as to who you are. There's no right or wrong to do that, right? So it's really about being authentic and yeah, this is how I'm going to do things and be comfortable with that, right? Because that's the truest way to lead a team.
That's good. So we're talking about visibility and leadership and what that representation really looks like. And I love you saying, you had this manager who
Hmm.
encouraged you just to be you and show up as you at the table and not really compare, but to think, what is that unique thing that I bring to the table? I love that.
Yeah, and and we've all worked with people who have, filled in or, succeeded someone who was in a role previously, right? And it's just the recognition that they will not be like the person that you worked with before, right? So being appreciative and I think giving that grace, for that onboarding period to say, well, this isn't a different perspective that they bring, and they were hired, to do X, Y, Z and to provide that experience. So I think it's just the recognition that everyone's bringing something, and it's not going to be like the person ahead of them or even you. It's just, okay, this is what we do, and this is, I think, just again, the appreciation for that being authentic in that role.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good. And then as you're helping to shape the conversations through your advisory board, your advisory council, um,
Hmm.
and we're talking about, being a woman in still kind of a still a male dominated
Yeah,
industry. Have you received any challenges or pushback from some of those conversations as you're navigating them?
that's a good question. I I would say I think it's um nothing that's been memorable. How would I describe this? Nothing that's been memorable that it's been negative. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
It
I think
does.
there's been interesting conversations perhaps from people who just haven't, they've been in the industry a long time and they're just
Yep.
used to how things were done.
Yep.
But it's more of those experiences or those conversations where, you leave them maybe not satisfied with an answer, but just intrigued of, oh, well, why, I would never have thought of that. Or thinking about, I'm thinking of a conversation where, we're talking about female technicians coming into a home. And it's,
Mhm.
these are the reasons why having women in the field is so important, and then maybe just remind them that, yeah, this is valuable to the homeowner, it's valuable to the business, it's valuable for those young ladies looking at what they're going to do after high school or if they're looking for a career change. So, nothing that's been memorable in a negative light. It's just, oh, yeah, we've had these conversations and it's, you just expanded their thought process a little bit.
Yes, that's been my experience too. Truly, I think we've come into a time where the conversations around this has become more welcomed, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
And yeah, and I think all across the board we recognize like different voices are valuable. And so I love that. I love hearing because we talk about that all the time as women in the industry. It's like
Yeah.
actually I see like things have been done a certain way, or maybe they are surprised when you show up, but then ultimately it's kind of like, wow, now I have questions that I didn't get to ask before that I can ask
Right.
because you're a woman that showed up to the table. And just reminding women that as we do show up to the table, be confident and don't
Right.
be like guarded because those questions might really help the conversation. And it's not meant to attack you, but maybe just get us all speaking the same language, which is
Right.
cool.
Exactly. Oh, I like
Yeah.
that. Speaking of the same language, I like that. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. And so I wanted to shift the conversation because you have impacted so many students across the
Mhm.
nation. And this is not a question that I asked you in advance, so heads up. But this is one that came to me as I was thinking about you. And, I told you when we first met that I was receiving your supplies from online. We just were searching
Yeah.
because we
Yep.
talked to high school students and we were looking for tools and behind the trades came up, explore the trades came up
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, wow, I love that you all are creating these opportunities for these students. And as we're thinking about the future of HVAC, plumbing, and electrical,
Mhm.
do you all think about, where the future is going? Is there any like technology that you have your eyes on that you're
Right.
working on, really expanding what it looks like to not just introduce students, but also have them look like project into the future. This is where we're going as an industry.
Yeah. Great question. Okay, so if I were to, I'm just sort of thinking, just processing my question, Janelle, as I'm answering it. I think what's been really interesting, and I know a lot of us have seen the headlines related to data center construction and maintenance across the country, right? So that's been a really recent example that our team has received and really thought about as of late because we have had a couple of those companies reach out and just curious about what we do. And I think that all of this in the news, and I know that especially the students right now, middle school, high school, as they look at the future, I think it's imperative, and because we've talked about it, and I think we'll expand more of our content about this, but just how much, we talk about the trades and how they impact your home, but what if we were to take that steps further to say, here's the type of equipment and technology that the trades use when you go to Target, when you go to the grocery store, when you are learning about these data centers, because that's a complex conversation, right? So how can we talk about the trades and what they've done for generations before, but what does that look like moving forward? And there's going to be technology and systems that will be used that we don't even know exist right now. So I think it's the awareness, the conversation to them to say, hey, the phone that you use all day long, what does that mean for the trades? You may not think about it, but
Mm,
there's that data center in your community that
mm.
is a piece of that. So I don't know if that answered your question or not. I think it becomes just as technology develops, that's going to impact the trades in a wide variety of spaces.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I like what you're saying. So the way you all are tackling just how the industry is evolving, it's just to make it really practical for the students by saying,
Right.
hey, your day to day, these things, they're all connected to the trade. So just helping them
Right.
make those everyday connections so they can see themselves in that space.
Right. And you and I and everybody listening, we know what it means, A, because we're in the industry, but I think it's different as an adult if you're renting a home, you own a home. I think there's just a lot more components and systems that we're aware of
Mhm.
because of what we do. And I think for our kids, they don't know anything about the water heater until
Right.
until the hot water doesn't work, or man, it's the middle of July and it's hot. Why
Yeah.
isn't this working? So I think what we found to be successful is how can we relate the conversation to those students where it's something that they see every day or that they use every day. That's been the trick to help them understand how do I get from point A to point B, right? And when I'm a junior in high school and I'm taking chemistry, oh, so if I'm taking chemistry, this is what it means for the HVAC industry, right? So it's
Mhm.
what do they know and what could they relate that to?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
good because we have run into students who are kind of checked out with high school.
Yeah.
They're like, actually, I'm done with school. I can't wait till I'm finished. I never want to do school again.
Right.
And so I
Right.
and so I love
Right.
that you're saying actually pay attention in your chemistry class because
Yes.
you might not relate it to anything, but if you're getting into this trade, like it matters. Your math class, you're gonna need that.
You're gonna need that. I know.
Yeah.
We
So,
were we were just having this conversation with our son who's in eighth grade and talking about math. And somehow the conversation shifted. We watch a lot of baseball in our family. We're a baseball family. So when you're watching these games and they're talking about the athletes who have these multi-million dollar contracts, you want to say, this is why math is important. So
yeah.
as an athlete, how much do I get? How much does my agent get? What am I getting from sponsorship? I think it's the same thing of, well, no one told me why this is important. Why do I need to know this? Well, this is
Yeah.
why, right? So we just have to think about what does it mean for a 14-year-old? What does it mean for an 18-year-old?
Right,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, that's helpful. Okay, so explore the trades partners with contractors, manufacturers, schools. How do you lead across all these different stakeholders and stay mission focused? Because I'm sure everybody has kind of a different request or question from you.
Yes, that's a great question. We've been very fortunate in the fact that in our position at Explore the Trades, we get to talk to schools, we get to interact with people on the industry side, however that may span across that title.
Mhm.
And what we found really interesting is the commonality, especially around the industry, is well, something has to be done, right? So I feel like everyone has been very supportive of this pool, the continual pool of people graduating high school and entering the trades. That continuous population is needed for all facets of the industry. We need people to be in the field and service and install and sell and manufacture. So the whole ecosystem works together. very much equal to that on the education side, from what we have seen over the last 5 or 6 years, is okay, well, we know that all of the students that we have are not going to college for whatever reason, right? And that's okay. And I think education is now coming on board by saying, okay, well, we agree with the the need for a skilled workforce. So how now can we invest? So you're seeing this growing investment from education. You're seeing more from the industry, especially local contractors throughout the country, to say, I need people and I want to make an impact in my local school. So I think that local relationship, that local partnership brings tremendous ROI to both sides, right? So there's there's definitely a growing this growing swell of, yeah, we all get it. Now we have to make sure from industry and education that we're speaking in terms that we both understand, because education has their own vocabulary, industry has their own vocabulary. Okay, now we have to translate that because everybody wants the same things. It's just how do we communicate that?
Yes, that's good. And one of my favorite tools that you all offer is that pathway
Yeah.
poster where it kind of shows you, these are the steps towards getting into the trade and
Yep.
this is the earning potential. I just love those posters.
Oh,
I feel
good.
like,
Good.
yeah, I feel like they tell the story so well and it helps the students, the teachers, everybody really understand what the contractor, what the manufacturers, like what we all see in the industry.
Yep.
So I love that y'all offer that.
Oh, good. I'm glad you said that. And that's been a common response that we've heard, to say, and that idea, Janelle, those posters were born out of a couple comments. One of which, so we started this 5 years ago.
Mm.
Contractors would always call us to say, "Hey, I'm going to a career fair next week. Do you have anything I can use?" Okay. So you start to log those questions. And then on the flip side, with educators and counselors, we heard them say, well, I know that not all of my students are going to college, but I don't know enough about the trades to talk about it. So therefore, I don't. So, it's this, how can we create something that's ready made, that's easy for contractors to use? And how can we double that to fulfill that information gap so that at least those professionals in education have something to speak to at least get those conversations off the ground. So however, to your point, however we can show a snapshot, then that's what we've stuck with.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
good. It's impactful. And I
Good.
was thinking one of the conversations that I've had recently is about how we know the trades are not going anywhere. And,
Right?
it's such a force that's needed. It's a great pipeline, especially with the AI coming in and taking
Yeah.
a lot of jobs. But then the flip side of the conversation is if we all are in HVAC, then what does everybody else do? If everybody
Oh
is,
yeah.
in the trades, what does everybody else do in order to make sure that our economy keeps moving forward? Do you
Right.
all talk to students about other services, or do you have any information out there? Because, as an HVAC contractor, I'm working with other contractors that are not necessarily HVAC related, a
Mm-hmm.
bookkeeper, right?
Right. Right.
Marketing directors, things of that nature. Do you all talk
Right.
about those things?
Right. That's a good question. The current set of information that we have online and included in our poster kit, we do have one about customer experience and dispatch. And I know that there are AI tools, right, to help that make that area more efficient as well. We briefly talk about the other facets of the business. So we just launched last week an online contractor toolkit that's available for download. It's free for contractors to request. It's a 30-page document. And it's a 30-page document, and I know that sounds like a lot of information, but that toolkit will touch on different departments in the business. So again, if you're going out to the school, you can now talk to the students about, if something in the field may not be interesting to you, but you still want to work in the industry, here are 5 or 6 other departments that are really crucial to the business running, right, to being successful. So we have that information. Also, and I'll just talk about the toolkit really quick. So, also included in the toolkit are examples of activities that you might be able to use at elementary, middle school, high school that you can now incorporate about the trades with the students. And then I think most importantly is we also provide information about career and technical education, commonly known in education as CTE, which you and I both know as shop class is
Yeah.
is what it is, all those vocational classes. And it was important for us to include that so that contractors in the field understand how they now can contribute to their local school's CTE program in a wide variety of reasons. And the emphasis on the investment that's already being done on education can now be doubled by the industry as well. So now we're really giving students a great look at what the trades are. So there's some information to sort of help set the stage, but then also now additional resources that can be implemented if you were to go visit a school.
Wow, I love
Yeah,
that. That's you guys have made it really easy for us
that's good.
to to really think about, the next generation of trades people and how do we help them? How do we empower them? And it's easier to get involved with tools that you're offering. So that's really awesome that you guys are thinking even more deeper. I'm excited. I'm gonna get this
Good.
35 page. I'm
Well,
gonna
that's
get
the
it.
goal, right?
Yeah,
That's the goal to make it easy
right.
for all of you. I mean, you're busy running the business. So how can we serve as a partner for you to grow your business and be a really important player in the community? I think that's really important.
Yes, totally. And so as you're talking to schools, what is one of the biggest requests that you get from
Hmm,
the school side of things?
that's a good question. The first one is, do you know of anybody who we could talk to about HVAC, plumbing, electrical? So for all of the listeners,
Mm,
if we can help, if you are interested, and like you said in the intro, Janelle, we have our materials in over 24% of school districts around the country. So that's north of 3,000, which means that those are 3,000 school districts interested. So for all the listeners who would like to know, we'd be more than happy to give you a connection point if you were ready to start. So the schools are interested to know if we know of anybody in their area.
yeah.
Secondly, I think as schools become more involved in adding trades to their schools, to the curriculum, they want to know what we have. And of course, if it's relevant, if it's up to date, all the materials that we send are free because as a nonprofit, the support that we receive, we put back out into the world in these tangible pieces. So something that's cost effective. And then also as schools continue to build out their classes, they're curious about curriculum, which is
Mm,
sometimes we turn to a contractor to say, hey, what would you recommend, for this state? Because every state has different requirements. So I think for a lot of schools, they're interested in starting, but they may not know where to start. And that's where a contractor can come in to say, hey, well, if I was going to teach 16 and 17-year olds, this would be really important to just create that foundation. So the more sophisticated these programs get, I think it's a great opportunity for contractors to come in to to weigh in on that, right? And to
100%.
provide some advice.
Yes, that's so good. And I love a good call to action. So I'm going to double down on what you just said. Ladies, y'all heard Kate, as members, we have an ambassador program. So you can sign
Yes.
up with the Women at HVACR, become an ambassador, get these resources from Kate, email Kate, ask her, hey,
Yes.
Kate, what school is in my area? Because Kate has done this for me also, found a school that's in my
Yep.
area who is already using Explore the Trades and they just want some of your industry knowledge. They want you to come into the school and talk to students. So I
Yep.
am echoing what Kate just said. You are the one, there's a school near you to really go in and inspire these students.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Double down. That's it, Janelle. That's it.
It's a good one. It's a good call to action. Okay, so I wanted to wrap with just hearing a little practical advice that you would offer
Mhm.
someone, a woman who is building a business or leading a team, just stepping into, like you did, an executive role, leading a national organization. What encouragement or practical advice would you offer someone just stepping in? She's just starting.
Yeah.
What do you have for her?
What I always gravitate to is asking questions. I and that's how I learn, and I know that there are a lot of people who are the same way, right? And I think it's the awareness of yourself to say, I don't know what I don't know. And knowing that by you asking questions and asking people in various roles in the industry or in the business, what should I know? What would be most important to know? And I've had the chance to work with a lot of different women from the construction trades, in various capacities. And it's just really interesting because the more we're talking about, because the conversation always leads to, what do you do? How long have you been doing it? And it's a realization that you might be in this role like myself for 9 years, and there's a lot of things I don't know because I haven't thought of that perspective yet. And I think until you run into that situation, you go, oh, well, that's something that I never would have considered.
Mhm.
So for me, it's just asking questions from different perspectives because everyone's going to focus on the one thing that's important to them. And then I think when you add all those pieces together in that formula, then it just makes understanding what you're doing or what you intend to do that much easier, right? I think I'm just going to fall back to questions every single time.
Wow, that's good. That is awesome, Kate, because what you just did is you flipped it on its head when we think about leadership. It's like, oh, I was chosen for this role because I know so much.
Yeah,
And
right?
so I mean,
No, we don't.
right. And so I'm going to go in because I know, I have answers. They're looking to me for answers. That's
Right,
why you
right,
think you're chosen for the role. But you're saying, no, lead with humility, saying, you have the leadership ability. And so now use the people around you and ask questions so you can solve
right,
it together,
right.
utilizing your team. That is so good, Kate.
Well, and
Write that one down.
I put it in the book. No,
Yes.
because I think because I've fallen into this trap of why lead a team. So to your point, Janelle, every time they come to me, I need to have an answer. Nope. And I think it's just the more you do it, you go, I don't know. I don't know. So let's do a little bit of research. Let's ask some questions, and then I think you can make the best decision with the information you have. And that's the best we can do, right?
Yeah, that's the best we can do.
Yeah.
That's really good. Thank you, Kate. This was awesome. Thank you for drawing out time to have this conversation. I love to hear your journey and the things that you are impacting just all around the nation. It's really inspiring. So thank you for sharing that. Sorry if your email is going to get blown up after
Yeah, that's okay.
this.
I'll take them. I'll take them.
Yeah, but I think it's for such a good cause. You have such a great heart, and I love that you brought, where you came from before in serving people, and you brought that into an industry that's all about serving people.
Oh,
And
I
I can
appreciate
tell that
that.
you're
Thank you.
passionate. Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of Behind the Title, this podcast conversation. And like I said in the intro, I love if you could start commenting or, hit us on social media and say, I'd love to hear more about this from Kate. Maybe we could do a one-off conversation there. So we'd love to make this just a little more interactive as you all would like to see. So we'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.